God bless America. Hello, everybody. I am the Talk Radio Protege. This is the Protege program. Welcome back. Thank you for joining me. Now, I know that you clicked on a video that said how fascist propaganda is disseminated by children's cartoons, and we're going to get to that. I wanted to very quickly give you a short delineation between traditional fascism and 2017 use of the word fascism, because they're very, very different. So when you see the word fascist in the CNN headline that's talking about cartoons, you might expect to see the person write about 2017 fascism, which I believe the following to be a good definition of 2017 fascism, and that is the use of any variant of compulsion, explicit or implicit, to attempt, successfully or not, to minimize the voice of a marginalized person or group. This is the way that the left uses the word. When the right says fascism and they mean 2017 fascism, just take the word marginalized out of there and you have the same definition. But traditional fascism is very different. There are three philosophers that are broadly considered to be the fathers of fascism. They are Giovanni Gentile, Gabriele and Julius Evola. And they philosophized about fascism a lot. And the big tenet of fascism is to enshrine, preserve, and perpetuate natural hierarchies. And I just wanted to show you the source of where I got this information from. That'll be linked in the description below. The video is called Who Are Fascists? And it's on Rebel Media's channel on YouTube. So now that we have this information, now that we know that traditional fascism is all about natural hierarchies, and 2017 fascism is all about using violence to silence the voices of other people, let's go and look, not at that one, at the CNN column. This is from CNN Parenting, the title, Why Kids Love Fascist Cartoons Like Paw Patrol and Thomas. You know that this is going to be Thomas the Tank Engine. This is the headline that I saw, and I immediately thought, how on earth do children's cartoons disseminate propaganda around using violence to silence other people? Or what elements of Paw Patrol and Thomas the Tank Engine use violence to silence characters in their cartoons? And that's what we're going to talk about. Now, disclaimer, the parts of this column that are written by Eliza Strauss read like they were written by a childless weirdo, but we're going to persevere on through. Parents like to see themselves as purveyors of possibility, so this childless weirdo is going to pretend to speak for all parents around the world. We want our children to inhabit a world in which identities are both mutable and equal, and imagination and empathy reign supreme. The reason that I say that this reads like it was written by a childless weirdo is because anybody that has children knows that this paragraph is fake news. Even as a non-parent, as a person that wants to be a parent someday, that wants to be a good parent, who has done some research and some studying to try and figure out what it's going to take to be a good parent, I know that this is fake news. Let's go ahead and move on to the next paragraph. I can't decide if I want to go through this by order of topic or by the order that the column writes, so we're probably just going to end up scrolling through the column and reading everything. But anyway, young children, as dictated by their tastes and popular culture, have something else in mind. They're drawn into worlds in which identities are fixed, order trumps imagination, and transgressions are met with routine punishment. Now, here's one of the cons of giving you the secondhand reaction to a column. I have no proof of this, but I promise you, the first time I read this paragraph, and my first thought was, children need stability in order to foster, what's the word? Creativity. We hear, the argument comes up a lot that we need to do the school meal programs. We need to give kids free food because that will allow them to learn better. A hungry child has to spend too much brain power wondering where their next meal is going to come from, and that makes their education more difficult. So, stability, in other words, fixed identities, order trumps imagination, and breaking the rules gets punished. That's stability. That fosters creativity. And I wish I had proof that I was saying and thinking this before I read the rest of this column, because down later in the column, you're going to see where other people that do research into child psychology and study children are going to say those exact words, that stability is what's good for children. And the clash between what parents desire for their children and what children desire for themselves is most easily observable in cartoon preferences. So often the more parents dislike a show, the more their children love it. Now, I think that this is a pretty true sentiment. You know, as a person who was a child at some point, I very much rebelled against what my parents want. My parents didn't want me to sit inside on a Saturday morning and watch cartoons until 1 o'clock in the afternoon. But I wanted to watch cartoons until 1 o'clock in the afternoon because I enjoyed watching them. And it's most often what your parents don't want you to have that you end up desiring the most. This is true. It can be kind of a chicken and egg scenario. You know, a child wants dessert before supper, and a parent doesn't want the child to have dessert before supper. But it could be hard to tell whether or not the child wants dessert before supper because they want dessert or because mom doesn't want me to have dessert. So, in general, I kind of agree with this sentiment, but I don't think this kind of stands out as a reasonable paragraph in a column full of ludicrous paragraphs. So, I've never heard of any of the discussion boards, read any of the paragraphs, or heard of any of the prestigious publications that call Thomas the Tank Engine and Paw Patrol divisive shows. Just going to throw that out there. I don't run in those circles, so maybe that is true. There was something that I was looking for. Where did she say something about parents disturbed by authoritarianism? I think I skipped... Yes, I skipped down to this, right? Yeah. It's tempting as a parent, especially those of us who are aghast at contemporary politics, to be disturbed by the notion of our children tuning in for a regular dose of primary colored authoritarianism. Number one, childless weirdo pretending to talk for all parents. Number two, authoritarianism as defined by this childless weirdo, which I do not believe, in fact, to be authoritarianism. Number three, even, or mixing authoritarianism with fascism. Certainly fascism is authoritarianistic, but and I want to go into more details about fascism here, but I don't think that this video is the right place to do it, which is why the full fascism delineation video is going to come in the future, where we're going to talk about, brace yourselves, you might want to be sitting down for this, benevolent, fascistic elements of the society. We're going to talk about things like that, which I think are going to blow people's minds. But I don't think that this video is the place to do that. So just take my word for it for now, but make sure that you subscribe and hit the bell for notifications so that you can come back and check the full video where I explain why you can't just what's the word I'm looking for? Helter-skelter blend authoritarianism and fascism like this. And for another thing, you know, I said I wanted to do this. I couldn't decide whether to do this by topic or the order of the column, and that's because I thought it somewhat disjointed to stop in the middle of this paragraph and say, children as dictated by their tastes in popular culture, as if the tastes of the children are beamed into their minds by the sin box that is the television, as if they have no agency over the choice of cartoons that they want to watch whatsoever, as if they will just love whatever cartoon is put in front of them. Now, certainly children are more easily entertained than adults, but ask any child of the 90s. Don't ask any child of the 90s. Survey a cross-section of economic ranges of children of the 90s, and you'll find that children of the 90s had wide varieties of tastes in cartoons. I was a quote-unquote child of the 90s, and I didn't like any of the same cartoons that my friends liked. I grew up watching Pokemon, Digimon, and Yu-Gi-Oh! And all my friends grew up watching Cartoon Network. They grew up watching Dragon Ball Z, and other shows that were on Cartoon Network. I didn't get any of that. I got the CW4 Kids channel at my house, so I didn't watch any Dragon Ball Z. It's not pop culture. There is some self-agency in children selecting what cartoons they like. Now, jumping back down here, I should say, to the experts that are quoted. Remember, I said at the top of the column, and I said that I wish I had proof that I said this before I read the rest of it, is that children need structure because structure is the best place to foster creativity. The fewer variables in a child's life, the more open-minded and free-thinking they can be, the more variety of things they can think about. And this fellow here, Tova Klein, who wrote a book called How Toddlers Thrive, said this is an age group that is constantly dealing with all these negative feelings in themselves. Am I good? Am I bad? They're trying to figure out what that means. And they are in a state of life. I think, tell me if this doesn't sound like it makes sense. But children are in a state of their life where they don't have a lot of life experiences. They don't have a lot of definition in their lives. So when they are trying to figure out if they are bad, it's at a point in their life when they haven't done a lot of stuff. So they need to have someone lay for them the groundwork of things that are good so that they can then do the things that are good and then make themselves good. To say that a child is asking, am I good or bad, is... I don't think it fully captures the state of mind that children would be in at the stage of their life where they might be watching something like Paw Patrol or Thomas the Tank Engine. Because they don't have a lot of life experience to think about, and they don't have any structure of good or bad to think about, they wonder, am I good or bad? So they need a structure of good to be given to them, and I might say it's not the job of the cartoon to give them the structure of good, it's the job of the parents. So if the parents have not done a good job of giving the child a structure of good or bad before they dump them in front of the babysitter called the cartoon, then a parent hasn't done their job. As Klein goes on, these shows help children navigate their paradoxical relationship with power. On one hand, they desperately want some. On the other hand, children take comfort in the idea that someone is in charge. To them, Ryder isn't a megalomaniac, Sir Topham Hatt of Thomas isn't a neo-colonial autocrat. Those were just gooberish stuff that I skipped over from the beginning. You can go find this column and read those things for yourself. I think they're just too ludicrous to afford time to. And without going into the lore behind the shows, I think it would be hard to refute those criticisms. So just trust that those words are used earlier in the column, and let's move on. They're just guys delegating responsibilities to their eager inferiors, and the fact that these leaders, both white males, look like most figures in position of authority in the real world is not lost on children. In my opinion, that last sentence is fake news. Children don't care who's in charge. The authority figures are authority figures to children. In fact, a black child with black parents watching a show where a white person is in charge learns something more about the world than a white person with white parents watching a show where the white person is in charge. Because a black person learns, the first thing that they learn in their life is mom and dad are in charge, and mom and dad look this way. Then they watch Thomas the Tank Engine. They learn Sir Topham Hatt is in charge, and Sir Topham Hatt looks this way. Therefore, people that look like whatever can be in charge. They actually have more benefit in their life of watching these shows than white children with white parents do. But that's racial identity stuff, and I don't want to get off in the weeds about that. Then another child researcher is quoted down here. This is Yalda T. Uls of Common Sense Media. I highly recommend their website where they do reviews on television shows and movies. It's very, very useful for learning what movies and shows might be family friendly. Richness and simplicity of narrative in children's shows is really important because in the real world so much is going on and young children aren't really capable of abstract thought. And this can be demonstrated. This is documented that children's thinking is very different from adults when it comes to things that are happening in the real world. I don't remember what the tests are called, but look up on YouTube sometime videos of children undergoing certain tests. And if I can find it, I'll link it in the description, where a child is shown, for instance, 2 rows of coins and asked which row has more coins, and their answer differs depending on the relative length of the rows of coins, independent of the amount of coins in the row. So if a length of coins is 5 inches, if 2 rows of coins are 5 inches long and both rows have 10 coins, the child will say that both rows have the same number of coins. But take one row of 10 coins and keep it 10 coins but make it 10 inches long, and the child will say the 10-inch long row has more coins even though it's the same length, or even though they're the same number of coins. Now, moving on, let us go to the example of a parent that is cited by this columnist in their criticism of the shows that are being watched. Here we go. I watched Paw Patrol once with my daughter. Now, you've set your child in front of a cartoon that you expect to be a babysitter of sorts. You put a child in front of a cartoon because you want the child to not go anywhere and be quiet for a while. You can always, I have a baby brother-in-law, so I've watched a little bit of Paw Patrol. I know a little bit about the show, and I know that when Paw Patrol is on, there is no doubt where the kid is. He's in front of the TV and he's making no noise. He's watching. So you put your child in front of a terrible babysitter that's called a cartoon show, and you haven't vetted it at all because you've watched the show once and you didn't even watch the show before you let your daughter watch the show. So first of all, congratulations on properly vetting the show that your daughter is now watching. Second of all, this is not a glass ceiling issue. This entire paragraph is fake news. She says that one of the characters, a female dog from the show's Paw Patrol, most of the main characters are dogs. One of the main characters, a female dog, volunteers for a mission, and these dogs do basically they do community service. They do first response type stuff. There's a firefighter dog, there's a construction worker dog, there's a police officer dog, and then and there's 6 of them. I don't know what the female dog does. I don't remember. Call me a sexist, but I can only remember what those 3 dogs do. She says the female dog volunteers for a mission, but the leader picked 2 male dogs, and she remembers thinking there's a glass ceiling in this cartoon, which is totally fake news, and let me explain why. Just to briefly get into the lore of Paw Patrol, the 6 dogs are highly specialized in the things that they do. As I said, there's a firefighter dog, there's a construction worker dog, there's a police officer dog. Maybe the female dog just didn't have the right specialization for whatever the mission is. You obviously don't know. You've only watched 1 episode of Paw Patrol. So these are the kinds of parents that that this writer, and I didn't, Elisa Strauss, is going to get opinions on a television show. This is the exact same thing as what Marvel Comics just went through with their SJW line of comic books, and they're starting to pull themselves out of it. But they went through years, at least 2 years, of doing SJW stuff for the sake of people who are not going to consume the medium. You know, if cartoon writers read this article and see that parents like Rebecca Pajak, or Pajak, however you pronounce that name, don't like the show because they think there's a glass ceiling in it, and then they fix the show, Rebecca Pajak is not going to watch the show. You're not going to get more viewers out of building a children's cartoon for SJW adults. There are no SJW children, by the way. Children that are watching Paw Patrol don't think about politics. There are no SJW children. If you make a child's cartoon for SJWs, there will be no one watching it because children don't care about SJW politics, and adults aren't going to watch it because it's a children's cartoon. All right. I feel like I've been rambling on this, so let's move on. What is the final solution that Miss Strauss suggests for children's cartoons? Surprise, surprise. Color me shocked. Imagine the amount of even that I cannot fathom as I read this final paragraph. Here's an idea for the creative team behind Paw Patrol and Thomas the Tank Engine, should they want to broaden their appeal to parents without alienating their fan base. Time out. Like I was just saying, parents are not going to watch these shows. We've already demonstrated that parents who do care about the politics of Thomas the Tank Engine and Paw Patrol are going to put their children in front of it without knowing what's in the show anyway. So you're not going to get more viewers out of making a social justice show for parents that is a children's cartoon. With that in mind, here's the suggestion. Ryder, a white male child, and Sir Topham Hatt, a old white man, retire and are replaced by their equally domineering sisters. This in turn boosts the social status of all the non-male characters. Children would still get the satisfaction of immersing themselves in an orderly universe where rules are rules and everyone is in his or her place, just without the white guy at the top. White man, bad. Woman, good. Cartoon with white man, bad. Cartoon with woman, good. First of all, the men in these shows must be replaced with women who act like men, because these are domineering sisters. These are not the typical woman. This is the apex predator woman. And you have to point out that it must be a domineering sister. Otherwise, you're going to have a woman that acts like a woman running the show, and it's going to be different than if a man who acts like a man runs the show, because men and women are different. Newsflash. Now, all of that being said, what was the fascism that was pointed out in this column? You know, you read the column and you don't hear fascism. There was no talk of violence in these cartoons. In fact, let's go back to the criticisms leveled against Thomas the Tank Engine and Paw Patrol and see where all the violence is. Thomas has been called a pre-modern corporate totalitarian dystopia in the New Yorker, imperialist and sinister in Slate, classist, sexist, and anti-environmentalist in The Guardian. Paw Patrol is apparently equally polarizing. BuzzFeed called the show terrible, pointed to instances of gender and social inequality. In The Guardian, Ryder is described as a megalomaniac and implied an unstoppable god complex. Where's the condemnation of violence in these shows? There is no condemnation of 2K17 of current year fascism, which, strangely enough, considering everything that this article got wrong, the one thing that it got right is that the elements of the show that are fascistic are traditionally fascistic. The old is in a higher position above the young. The human is in a higher position above the inhuman. The male is in a higher position above the female. The, if you want to get really traditionally hierarchistic, the white is in a superior position above the non-white. Although, technically speaking, the only white males that run the show run a show that consists of no other humans. White male Ryder from Paw Patrol runs a group of dogs. They're literally not human. Sir Topham Hatt, the white male that runs the show in Thomas the Tank Engine, runs a group of literally not humans. But yeah, it's a criticism of actual traditional fascism, not current year fascism. So that's why I thought it was important to talk about the differences between traditional and current year fascism. And I think that, as I say, the criticisms levied against these cartoons are actually not constructive, because if the cartoons were to implement these criticisms, were to remove the traditional hierarchy found in their cartoons, children would lose a great deal of interest. Not to mention, it wouldn't draw in any new viewers, because the children that are watching the shows now are watching the shows because of the cartoonish aspect. They're not watching for the politics. And any child that's not watching Paw Patrol is watching not because of any political thing, but because of a personal taste. And bringing in these political elements is not going to bring in any parents, because these are children's cartoons. You're criticizing a medium on the grounds that people who don't watch the medium care enough to start watching the medium if the cartoons implement the criticisms that you're levying against the cartoons. All of which makes a hill of beans of sense. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you'll leave a like and subscribe. Hit the bell for notifications so that you don't miss a single video. This video, going up on Tuesday, so I'll be back in the office tomorrow. We'll be getting back to the new news cycle topics. We'll be covering a lot of things in that regard. Also, if you're interested in the full-length fascism delineation video, make sure you leave a note in the comments. That video is coming, but I will make sure and put a rush on it, as they say, if I get a lot more feedback from people wanting to hear that. So, again, thank you for watching. Until next time, good night, and God bless.